Every American adult can now get a COVID vaccine, growing safety concerns for Peloton treadmill owners and Governor McConaughey. Texas voters are interested. Monday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Monday, April 19th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Carlo, I thought somehow you were going to work in an all right, which is kind of what every news organization does anytime Matthew McConaughey's name is mentioned.
It's such a cliche now, isn't it? Although that is a great line from a great movie. How was your weekend, Jill, before we get started?
It was okay. I cannot shake this cold that I have. It's just so frustrating. But,
how's Alex? Is Alex better?
I think so. I think we're going to send her to school today. So that's good news. How are you doing?
I'm okay. We're in the process of moving. So if I'm scatterbrained this week more than usual, just my apologies. You know how it is. Moving is just the absolute worst, right? It's just, it sucks.
Becky's
8
third
months
trimester,
pregnant?
so I'm imagining it's falling primarily on you.
No stress over here.
At least that's what I did when I was really pregnant, because we moved as well. I was like, sorry, I'm pregnant. I don't think I'm going to be able to help with this one.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to some news. All adults in the United States now eligible for vaccination. This is as of today. The last handful of states have now opened up eligibility, meaning that meeting President Biden's deadline. The pace of vaccinations is averaging about 3.2 million doses a day. There are signs, though, in some states that supply is starting to outstrip demand. It's an indication that the country could be close to hitting the vaccine wall, which comes as the national caseload is around 67,000 new cases a day, up from 54,000 a month ago. And Dr. Fauci now saying he expects a decision will be made on the J&J vaccine by Friday. Dr. Ashish Jha, he's one of the epidemiologists that I follow on Twitter. I thought he put this pretty well just to sum up where we are as a country right now. He said infection numbers in the U.S. are so unusual. We've been stuck between 55,000 and 70,000 per day for 2 months. It's the longest we've been flat. Crazy part, two dramatic things are going on at once. B117, which is that UK strain, took over, causing cases to explode. Vaccinations going great, which causes cases to plummet. And so we are flat. And I think cases are actually much higher. I just don't think there's a lot of testing going on.
Yeah, you're probably right. God, imagine what they would look like if we did not have a vaccine, right? Oh my God, it'd be a disaster right now. The J&J decision, the more I think about it, the more it marinates in my head, the more obvious it is that it will go down in history as one of the worst public health decisions of our lives, I think. And there's a lot to choose from in this last year for that for that award. It feels like, I mean, my feeling right now is like we're so close, and it just feels like we're blowing it, or we're starting to blow it. And it's weird to say because, like you just said, Jill, we are doing crazy vaccine numbers. 3.2 million a day is fantastic, and I'm hoping that vaccine wall that we're going to start, we may not hit it right away, because now that eligibility is open, I think we are going to see a surge of people going to get shots. But it's coming. That vaccine wall is coming. It's just so frustrating. It makes me so frustrated. Thankfully, though, my newly zen approach to the pandemic is keeping me from losing my mind, or else I think I would just not be able to sleep with some of this news. Meanwhile, I don't know if you've just paid attention to what's happening overseas. India, if you looked at the India chart, it's now vertical. They're just exponential. Caseload rising, 275,000 new cases a day. Think about that. Brazil is just an absolute catastrophe. Most of the ICU patients in that country are now under 40, which just shows you that new strain that they're dealing with there is much more prevalent among young people. And we should be airdropping vaccines into these countries at this point, because as we've said a million times, this thing ain't over until it's over everywhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of frustration from the global community. I was reading comments that people in Canada were writing to on Moshe, our friend of the pod, who I think is going to be filling in for you. You're taking a couple days off to move towards the end of the week.
Yep.
On his wall, where they were just saying, we're watching in the U.S. vaccine appointments go unused, especially, and this isn't something that someone wrote, but just one trend that's emerging that we've discussed here is that counties that that heavily voted for President Trump, those are the least vaccinated counties. That's where you're seeing the most hesitancy. So there is a very, very big correlation here between skepticism and Trump support. Skepticism on the vaccine and Trump support. So just take that for what you will. Ivanka Trump, his daughter, got the vaccine. I don't know if you saw this.
I saw
she
that.
got the vaccine. Yeah, and she posted it on Instagram. But the notable thing is that I pointed out actually on Friday, is that if you go and then read the comments, everyone was like, nah, no, thank you. So when you think about the people who follow her, most of those people were writing they weren't writing good for you, great to get the vaccine. Right. Everyone was writing, are you serious? Yeah. How, what's wrong with you? Why are you taking the vaccine? I'm going to pass, blah, blah, blah. So obviously there's this delineation. Amazing. Back to what I was saying about Moshe and the person who wrote in it from Canada is that I think there's a lot of frustration from other countries. And this person was saying, it's so frustrating. We are seeing a surge here and across the border, we could get a vaccine and they're basically going unused at this point.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of blame to go around for that. The Trump thing just blows my mind because it's like the vaccine. This was your guy, right? The vaccine was his greatest achievement. Without question, what he did to help get us these vaccines was his greatest achievement, and it's just like it never happened. It's just mind blowing.
Okay, let's switch gears. I feel like every day we could have even started this podcast talking about mass shootings because there were a few over the weekend. Friday, we started our podcast with breaking news of another mass shooting, and it feels like that's going to become, unfortunately, the norm. Yep. But back to that FedEx shooting that we were talking about Friday, the gunman who murdered 8 people at that FedEx facility in Indianapolis bought 2 semi-automatic rifles that he used in that rampage weeks after a shotgun was confiscated from him by the FBI over concerns about his mental health. Think about that. So there were already red flags, so to speak, being raised about him. 4 of the victims were from the Sikh community. Investors are still trying to figure out if they were targeted. The gunman's family actually apologized for his crime, saying that they tried to get him the help that he needed.
It didn't really work, did it? Indiana has a red flag law that should have caught this, at least on paper, but it obviously didn't. So I don't know what happened. I don't know how this kid was able to get his hands on a semi-automatic rifle, 2, no less. He was a worker at that FedEx facility, by the way. So it's unclear if these people were targeted, just the workplace was targeted, or if this was just him going out in a blaze of glory like he said he wanted to. What was I going to say? Yeah, you mentioned these. There were a couple other mass shootings this weekend, one in Wisconsin, one in Austin, Texas, 3 dead apiece in those. The gunman in the Austin shooting is still on the loose. Sounds like it was a sheriff, actually a former sheriff's deputy. So I guess when they say things are starting to get back to normal, sadly, in this country, this is what that means, right?
There was this report from someone from ABC News, and he was saying that this is now the 3rd mass shooting in Indianapolis alone this year. And he noticed that there just wasn't a memorial outside of this FedEx facility. There weren't flowers or signs like you normally see. And he's like, that just people are numb to it. There's so many shootings that you're just like, you can't even process them before there's another one. I know. But a little bit of background on what actually happened in this specific case. Apparently last March, the shooter from the FedEx building, his mom called police because she felt like her son's mental health was deteriorating and was so poor that she thought he was actually going to commit suicide by cop. So the police, the FBI actually came to her house. They took the son's gun that he had at the time. But by law, they need to actually take that case to court and have a judge make this ultimate decision to put this guy on that red flag law or whatever list that was that would prevent him from buying a gun. For whatever reason, that never happened. Okay, they never actually went to court to follow up. So they're now looking into why that is. What happened there that went wrong? If you look, though, it was early March 2020. Perhaps it had to do something with the pandemic. I don't know. It's still unclear.
That's good to know. I didn't realize that they had actually not that it mattered, not that it makes much of a difference now, but I didn't realize that they had just not taken the case to court. Interesting.
Okay, the final phase of the Derek Chauvin trial begins today under a national cloud of anxiety over other recent police killings. Since Chauvin's trial started, at least 64 people have died in encounters with the police, according to the New York Times, or about 3 a day on average. Blacks and Latinos make up more than half of those killed. Protests continued in cities across the country over the weekend in response to the shootings of Adam Toledo in Chicago and Daunte Wright in Minneapolis.
Yeah, the police choppers were overhead in Brooklyn all weekend, which has become sort of this weird sign. Like whenever you see that, you can basically say like, "Oh, there must be protests." It's just very unsettling. They hover these choppers like just overhead. It just gives you this really weird sense of like anxiety. I don't know if anyone else has felt that or if that happens in other cities, but New York City is among the cities starting to prepare for the possibility of unrest for the Chauvin verdict, which, as we said last week, could come after they wrap up closing arguments, which would be today or tomorrow. And also, I just want to make a note of this. Journalists that were covering the demonstrations in Minneapolis on Friday night, reporting all weekend that they were roughed up by police. Police made them lie on their stomachs, photographed their press credentials, zip tied them in some cases. That is really not acceptable for obvious reasons. So I don't know exactly what happened there. I got to do a little bit more digging into that, but something to note.
They've since apologized. The governor, even in the state, said that they've since apologized. Look, the thing to watch in the Derek Chauvin trial, most analysts do not think that there's any way that Derek Chauvin's just going to get acquitted entirely. Mm-hmm. It's just the question of which charge will he be found guilty of, murder or manslaughter, and that will perhaps make a big difference in terms of what kind of reaction we're going to see.
Big time.
Overseas, doctors for Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition leader who's been in a penal colony for the last 2 months, they say he is in bad shape and actually could die within days if not given proper medical treatment. Navalny's been on a hunger strike for 20 days to draw attention to his deteriorating condition. The White House over the weekend warning Russia that, quote, there will be consequences if Navalny dies in prison.
And this is actually just coming across the AP. You ever wonder if we do this podcast live to tape or not? Here's your answer. This is flashing from the Associated Press out of Moscow right now. Reading from the AP, the Russian State Penitentiary Service said Monday a decision has been made to transfer imprisoned Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who is in the third week of a hunger strike, to a hospital. So they are moving him. So hopefully that's a good sign. It would be very hard for me to imagine that Putin would let him die in jail. His daughter also calling on the Kremlin to help. You know, the eyes of the world are on this case. And I think that they really would. I think Putin and the Kremlin are really going to underestimate the global backlash if they let something happen to this guy who is, you know, sort of a modern day Nelson Mandela in what he's been doing. I mean, this man is an absolute hero just for the cause of democracy and freedom around the world. It's amazing. The bravest person on earth.
The bravest, you said.
Yeah, just unbelievable. I mean, think about what he did, right?
I mean, to go back to Russia,
knowing this was going to happen. It's not like it was a surprise. Yeah.
Let's talk a little, I guess it falls under the headline of business news, but also under health. The Consumer Product Safety Commission saying on Saturday that consumers should stop using Peloton's treadmill if they have small kids or pets. The feds say there are 39 instances that they know about now in which a child, a pet, or an object got sucked underneath the equipment, including one death. They even released a video of one child getting stuck in the Tread Plus, although they were able to get out. Peloton is pushing back. They say the product is safe as long as the safety instructions are followed. The problem is that those safety instructions are keep pets and small kids away from the treadmill. But if you have pets or you have small kids, right, you know that's probably not going to happen.
They don't always listen. Yeah, they basically the feds are saying if you're going to use this thing, use it in a locked room. I know you don't like to watch these videos. Nobody likes to watch videos of children being harmed. But that video that they put out of the little boy, I don't know if you saw it. It's really unsettling.
I watched the first 30 seconds, but the in terms of what happened, the lead up to it, and then I just stopped because I kind of knew what was coming. I didn't know actually when I was watching it if the boy had survived or not, so I couldn't watch it. I just stopped watching it.
He's fine.
But look, the other treadmills also have this issue. It's not an exclusive problem to Peloton, so there is a question about why are they going so hard on Peloton.
That's what I was going to ask you, because it's been a long time since I've used a treadmill, but they are a little bit dangerous, like just the concept of how they work, right? But I was looking at the Peloton one. It doesn't look like it's any different. It just has a screen on it. So I don't know why are they picking on Peloton? It's a little bit unclear. Just speaking of tech companies and safety issues, I just wanted to sort of get on the record with this, Jill. Two men who were riding in a Tesla over the weekend that officials say was probably in driverless mode. They were killed when that car crashed near Houston on Saturday. This is the latest crash in a series of accidents that involve Tesla's autopilot feature, which is that feature that basically lets drivers give control of the vehicle over to the onboard computer. So in this instance, one of the two men in the car was in the passenger seat and the other guy was in the back seat. So Tesla says, obviously the driver has to still be in the driver's seat if they're using this vehicle. You're not supposed to just hang out in the back seat. I don't know what these guys were up to. They have to be prepared to take back control of the car. So anyway, this car was going fast. It ran off the road, hit a tree, burst into flames. It took firefighters 4 hours, 32,000 gallons of water just to put the fire out because, again, something else we're going to have to start dealing with as more electric cars are on the road. It ain't like when a regular car catches fire, right? Those lithium-ion batteries, they burn for a long time, and a lot of firefighters don't really know how to deal with that yet.
Okay, the Oscars are finally almost here. The producers of Sunday Ceremony say the show is going to look more like a movie than a TV event, with LA's Union Station playing a starring role, a downsized red carpet, hubs in Paris and London, and nominees mingling inside and out. The guest list has been slimmed down. None of the big Hollywood moguls are going to be there, just the nominees. The good news is that California looks like it has emerged from the worst of its winter COVID surge. Infection rates are plummeting across the state. Nothing I just read makes me feel like I want to watch this show.
See, I actually had the opposite. I actually had the opposite reaction, just because I'll be interested to see if they actually, they have an opportunity to do something new and sort of freshen this thing up. And the Oscars have been really stale for a while, so maybe it'll be cool. Steven Soderbergh, the director, ironically enough, the guy who directed Contagion, is the person in charge. He's running the show here, so he put out sort of like the what it's going to look like. So it could be cool. He said that masks are going to play a key role. I don't really know what that means. Maybe just people are going to be wearing them, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the ratings over under on this is going to be. The Golden Globes were down 60%. The Grammys were down 50%, 53%. I think this will probably be a 60% hit. Also, I mean, even if it weren't COVID, the movies this year are just not movies that a lot of people have seen. I guess that is partially due to the pandemic, obviously. But this research firm called Guts and Data, they put out this poll that I thought was really interesting. Last month, they put this out last month. 18% of active film watchers had even heard of Mank, which is the movie that is the leading contender at the Oscars. So, I mean, you're going to nominate movies that nobody saw. Nobody's going to watch the show, I think, is the problem. So this could just all be a one-off because of the pandemic, but we'll see.
Okay, if Matthew McConaughey actually does decide to run for governor of Texas today, he's going to be entering the race as the front runner. According to a new survey of registered Texas voters, the actor holds a 12-point lead over Greg Abbott, the Republican incumbent, 45% to 33%. First, though, the moderate McConaughey would have to win a primary, which could be more challenging. Texas Republicans broke for Abbott 56 to 30. Texas Dems say they want a progressive over a centrist. Wait, so what would he be running as?
I don't know. I think he would be running as I think he'd have to run as a Republican, I think, because I don't see how he would win as a Democrat. But it's unclear. He doesn't have allegiance to either party, and he's been very hard on both parties, which I think is why in a lot of polling people like him. But I think when it comes down to it, it would be very hard for him to win a primary for that reason, which is just shows you how the primary system is totally messed up. But people with high name recognition running for office, that's obviously not a new thing. Look at Arnold Schwarzenegger in California, right? But I do think that Trump really opened the door for a lot of folks who maybe would have said in earlier times, like, I don't know, I'm probably not qualified to be the governor or the president or the mayor, but it's like, well, this guy could do it, right? But the reason why I make that point is Andrew Yang. I don't know if you've been following the New York City mayor's race now that you're not a New York City resident anymore, maybe not quite as much. But Andrew Yang is the current front runner in the New York City mayor's race. If that election were today, he would win. Even though he basically has no qualifications, he's never even voted for in New York City for mayor. So he's making this very interesting play that we'll probably keep an eye on because it has some national repercussions. He ran for president, even though he didn't really have much of a chance. He got all of this free media, right? All of this name recognition via the media. And then he's used that to parlay that into a run for office he actually could win, which is the New York City mayor's race. McConaughey's a little bit different because he didn't need to run for office for everybody to know who he is. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he'd be a good governor. I don't know. Right. I mean, it's not like our politicians that aren't actors are that great.
He's a little kooky, isn't he, though? I mean, I feel like every time I see a picture of him outside of a movie, he's shirtless and hitting a bongo.
I mean, what's wrong with that?
Not that there's, by the way, nothing wrong with that. Yeah. That guy is living it, like he's doing it right. That's what that's telling me. Okay, finally the photo. He is quite good looking.
Yes,
yeah,
he would beat Gavin Newsom in that title.
Finally, the photo that went around the world this weekend showing Queen Elizabeth dressed in black and sitting alone at her husband's funeral. The Queen, if you're wondering why this seating arrangement was the way it was all because she was just following COVID protocols at the service. But there was something about that picture of her all alone without Prince Philip by her side. It was pretty emotional, and it made the cover of pretty much all of the newspapers in the UK.
It really was, actually. I have to say, there was something about that photo just because this guy had, Prince Philip had been at her side, as we've talked about, since before she was even queen. And now she's like really alone for the last phase of her life. It actually did sort of even get me. I don't know if you caught any of that coverage on Saturday. I just sort of I was in and out of it. But Harry and William were both there, and there were photos and video of them chatting amicably with Kate Middleton sort of in between them. So I think that's a good sign, I guess, that they've at least maybe patched their rift. We'll see. And the other thing was I just loved the hearse that they had up. The Prince Philip's coffin was in that old green Land Rover that he apparently picked out specifically for his funeral. I thought that was really cool.
So apparently the New York Post, anyway, according to sources there, Kate Middleton is being described as the peacemaker. She was apparently the first one who approached Harry. They started chatting, and then that opened the door for William to come over. And then once they were all three chatting, she sort of slunk back and let them do their thing. Whatever the truth, who knows?
Can you imagine if
they're talking again?
Can you imagine if your like family tribulations were just in the world media like this? Like every time you got into a fight with your brother or sister or something, it was like on the cover of the newspaper. I do feel bad for them for that.
And probably wrong, and like probably
yes,
not
of course.
correct.
right, exactly.
Okay, let's leave it there. That's what you need to know for Monday, April 19th.
Have a good one, guys.